Hey, Tiny's in the house.
Yeah, man. What happened?
Charlie Adeo.
Charlie. Oh, see you. You be the big man of the day and the big man of the
Look at
moment. Right now, I agree with the way to go, Charlie.
Charlie, how you go do? We did try.
Yep.
Okay. So we are ready. It looks like
I think a few people have their microphones still unmuted. Chappie and a few others. If we can all mute our microphones, then we can start.
I will mute everybody for now. Yeah.
All right.
Right, authority, quick.
Okay. So tonight we have Samuel Matama, our own defensive midfielder of Agri House.
That's right.
And he's going to give us a talk on the role of agriculture. Basically, we are in the era where we are saying that Ghana is beyond aid at the moment, right? So Sam has some ideas that he would like to share with us. If you've not purchased his book, Better Than Gold, please, you better get your copy as well. Let me give a brief introduction on Sam. Okay, so he's currently a business consultant with finance and accounting background. He has an associate degree in accounting and business finance, and licensed stockbroker in Ghana. Wow. A career counselor in the military, the US military. He has a passion for agribusiness, and he consults for some farms in several African countries. So this is something that he's currently kind of doing to help countries in Africa kind of improve their practices and then improve yields. I know he's done this in Zimbabwe, and he's also into entrepreneurship and quite a few other things that he will probably be talking about during his talk. Now, the aim here is for Sam to be able to share his expertise and deliver his talk so that the rest of us can take the knowledge and apply it to fix our country, right? We are fixing our attitude, but we are also fixing our country, because the people in power won't fix it for us. So we're trying to do that. Now that I've finished with the introduction, I'll hand over to Sam, and then he would be able to proceed on delivering his talk whilst I
Thank you very much, Vice President. We appreciate you for this great and amazing opportunity, and we are really, really happy that we are looking forward to something big for our country, Ghana. And before we start, I mean, I got to do something that I was taught to do as a child. So I just want to say a word of prayer before we start, because that's the only place I get my inspiration from, if you don't mind, for those of you who can. Short word of prayer. So Father, we thank you. Father, we bless you, because even today, as we are about to have this talk is not going to bring about strife, but it's going to bring about unity, whereby we're going to work together as one so that we can help Ghana become the best country that is destined to be. Father, please take over this talk. Let peace prevail. Let understanding be great. And most importantly, in the end, we are going to give you all the glory. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. So guys, yeah, It's going to be a nice talk. It's going to be a nice time we're going to have. We're going to discuss a lot of things, and this is not political at all. That's one thing about me. I hate being political about my approach. Even when the book was being launched, I was approached by both political parties to try and associate with them, but I had to take myself out. My aim is to help Africa, especially starting with Ghana. A little history, when we started this farm project about almost 5-6 years ago, my first place of interest was Ghana, and I was heartbroken. Man, we had to deal with some land issues that went over and over and over again. You know, these chiefs in Ghana, you go and buy land from them, and then by the time you realize, even the same land has been sold to 5 people, and then you are dealing with, you know, land litigation, fighting legal fees. So out of my head and stuff like that, I had to move to partner with a friend in Zimbabwe to start a farm. And it took off well. We're not doing badly. And then one of my friends who was in the US, also part of an investor for the farm, said, why not come back to Ghana? Give Ghana the chance again, Dr. Annan. And I was like, you know what, that's a good idea. So we came back to Ghana and then also launched the book and launched the consultancy in the area of agriculture. Why was my focus on agriculture? People always ask that question. So let me use a little bit of history again, starting from, let me say even like 1492, when America was discovered. Most of them could not even figure out this country. So what they had to do was that they were dying from the cold, dying from the heat. I mean, it was it wasn't like the European weather, especially the British weather, which, I was in England for a while, and it's a very confusing weather. You can actually wear a t-shirt today and get out. By afternoon, you are back in a sweater, in a jumper, trying to rush home because of the cold. So they were not able to survive. So they had to come and find slaves in Africa who might be able to stand these things to come and help them plant or start their farms. So the initiation of the greatness of America started with farming. So the slaves were brought in mainly not because they came to build factories, but they came to build farms. So when the farms became big and huge and they realized that we have to now process these produce that we have because of their exceeding our expectations, they began to build factories. And then the factories started to build the service industries. And then the so-called America became great. Likewise, in our country, Ghana, if we decide to bypass the agricultural side, the country might seem to go forward, but we might not get anywhere because we got to be able to know how to crawl, walk, and run. Crawl, walk, and run. That is one thing we had to learn in the military. And I appreciated that a lot. So one of the things that we should have focused on in the beginning of our independence was agriculture. Why am I saying agriculture? Agriculture is life. Without agriculture, guess what? You're going to be, if you have to borrow what you got to eat, then it's a problem. You can borrow what you want to wear. You can borrow what you want to drive. You can borrow where you want to sleep. But to borrow what you're going to eat, that means that the person who is giving you that food can poison you. So if we are able to grow our own food, guess what? Out of the excess of the food we are growing, we can now even start exporting some of that food to other neighboring countries and also to the countries in the other continents of the world. So we got to get back to the basics. If we solve the basics, we can solve the complicated aspects of the economy. So starting from my slide, if you go to the second page, it just gives you a little rundown. If you go back, yes, we're going to talk about 4 major things, nothing extraordinary, about the uncompromising imperative, like why food is producing the fuel for life. It's nothing extraordinary, but we're going to talk about the importance of food. I'm going to share some numbers, some statistics to let us see where we are as a country and how we can take advantage of, where we are and then move forward. We're going to talk about how we ourselves as Motowners, AKORA 1993 year group, what role each of us can play to help take this to the next level. And then finally, we're going to see how we can make a difference. I believe every single one of us here can make a big difference. Next slide. Just like some people may say a McDonald's burger or a Burger King burger is the fuel for your body, which is not, but we will take it like that. It's the same thing like a fuel for cars. So food is important. Food is great. I mean, without food, and eating the right kind of food is what is going to keep us healthy. So we got to not just producing any kind of food, but we got to produce the right kinds of food. I'm going to touch about that later on in the slides. Next slide. Now, this is alarming statistics that which kind of beats my imagination. If you look at number one, Ghana, tinned tomatoes, we import $1 billion of tinned tomatoes in a year. Why? We are doing a jollof war with Nigeria. So we are importing $1 billion of tomatoes. No, in fact, that's tinned tomatoes alone, not even the fresh tomatoes. Rice, 800 million. Sugar, 300 million. Flour, 600 million. Even poultry and the meat, we're looking at 400 million. Fish, we have the sea, and fish is at 245 million. Now, even the fresh tomatoes, just from Burkina Faso alone, we have 100 million. I don't want to say the number 8 because it's very disgraceful, so I'll skip that one. We can go to the next slide. Cooking oil. All the palm nuts we have in Ghana, we are still importing cooking oil at $300 million. Pharmaceuticals, I don't mind because possibly we are not there yet. But soap, cosmetics, I don't really mind that much. Plastics, okay, fine. Tiles, ceramics, I don't mind. Car spare parts. Guess where most of the money is coming from? Apart from the car spare parts, most of them are coming from the food industry. Let's go to the last page. Furniture, textiles, apparel, home appliances, and then the final one. $200 million. So, why am I saying this? $1 billion of tomatoes alone, tinned tomatoes. Most of it coming, according to statistics, most is coming from China. One thing about Ghana is that we have very bad data collection. So sometimes we can't even determine where most of the stuff is coming from. But from what my sources are telling me, most is coming from China. The Chinese have realized that Africans like their tomatoes, so they are jumping in and sending the tomatoes to us. They have a few factories in Ghana producing tomatoes. Guess what? Most of their concentrates for producing those tomatoes is coming from China. They are even barely buying the raw materials from the Ghanaians. So that's a big problem. So an example, Ghana also, I think the president actually cut sword for one of the biggest tomato factories in Ghana in Burikun, around Wedi. It's called the Wedi Tomato Factory. Almost about $18 million. Factory is now opened, but guess what? Do you know they have no tomatoes to produce the tomato paste? Because nobody can produce the tomatoes. They didn't plan for who to produce the tomatoes. So we are going to start even possibly importing the tomatoes from Burkina Faso to come and use in our own factories. That is how serious a situation it is. I mean, we are Motowners. We've been to the best school in Ghana. I mean, what can we do to help our country in this agricultural sector? This sector can actually open up so many jobs, more than even possibly the public sector. Because I think the number one employment sector of Ghana is agricultural sector. Why can't we use that to employ most of these unemployed youth? Because look at what I just said. Forget about even the figures alone. Look at the secondary jobs these things can create for transportation industry, the restaurant industry, for canned food industry, for processing industries. So this alone can create more jobs for us than we can even imagine. So we got to look at this thing carefully and then be like, you know what? It's time for us to think again. Because I understand every country borrows. US has borrowed now, they can't even borrow again. So has the UK. So has even China is even still borrowing. But as much as we borrow, we got to channel these funds into the right areas. And very likely, if I may beg of some of the people here who might be in power, let us channel most of them into some of it, at least a great proportion of that amount of money into the agricultural sector, so we can actually boost our economy again. Now, I didn't have a slide for this one, but let's talk about it. We are all making noise about this cocoa thing with the Chinese. In my best opinion, let them have the cocoa. Let's focus on what we eat. Because most of the time, most countries are supposed to be exporting the excess, comparative advantage. Forget about absolute advantage. Let's look at comparative advantage. Let's start exporting the excess. Let's start even producing what we eat. How much of the cocoa that we produce in Ghana is even consumed in Ghana? But this is what happens. If you look at it carefully, most of the funding for the cocoa comes from abroad. So they lure these farmers into producing the cocoa so that the so-called $125 billion industry, only about $5 billion comes to only Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which produces about 70% of the world's cocoa. Because in the end, most of the cocoa is going to be sent to people in the UK and the US celebrating Valentine's Day. You get my point? So they are the ones controlling us as to why we should produce the cocoa. Because this is the reason why. They know that the numbers for cocoa doesn't actually benefit them. If you plant an acre of cocoa, you can harvest a maximum of 2 bags per harvest every 6 months. But most people are actually harvesting that every year. So the whole year, 1 acre of cocoa will produce 2 bags. A bag of cocoa is selling for less than $150 per bag. That is sad. The whole acre is gone. But they're going to have us use most of our land for cocoa so that their so-called girlfriends and boyfriends can enjoy Valentine's Days. Why don't we start producing things that we can actually consume, like rice, like tomatoes, like onions, things that we can consume, and then the excess can be exported. But rather, we are producing things that we don't consume ourselves. That in the end, people sitting in big places in our capital city are the ones actually doing syndicate loans to actually fund these projects. If we are able to cut down on our imports, guess what? That is also a gain on foreign exchange. Just by cutting down on imports is a gain on foreign exchange. So we don't have to depend on cocoa alone for foreign exchange. No, that doesn't make it right. Let's look into other produce that can give us more money. When you're looking at farming, we got to look at farming from a business perspective. Look at it from angles of the fact that, what is going to be my yield per acre? We are not here to waste time. We are here to make money. So what is our yield per acre? What is our yield per square meter? What is our yield per square foot? I visited a farm one day and I was impressed. This farmer actually makes yield analytics for even the yield per square foot. He was making close to about almost $9 per square foot. $9 per square foot a year. That is alarming. We should get to that point. That's where my whole aim is. Let's get to that level. Do you know that most of the imported goods, most of the vegetables sold even at ShopRite, Koala, are imported from South Africa, sometimes even from Europe? That is sad. Guys, that is sad. That is why we are here. We cannot go for more loans for agricultural projects. Let's produce ourselves, export, make money, put the money back in the system. That is what will bring taxes back. That is what will bring more income back into the country. And that is what will get us eating right, because the food that we are eating we ourselves produced it, so we know what we put in our food, not produced somewhere and brought to us to eat. Next slide, please. So next slide. Yeah. Let me change that. Okay, I was going to do lettuce, but I think I forgot to change it header. But let's do tomatoes. Okay, and I'm going to use square meters. An acre of land is tomatoes. Forget about lettuce. It's tomatoes. I used lettuce and I changed my mind because I was trying to get to a point, because tomatoes is something that we import a lot. That is our number one big import item. $1 billion. So 1 acre of tomatoes is about 4,000 square meters. 4,000 square meters is like a football park, a Crossport Stadium. That's an acre. We got to take away the spaces between the beds. If we make the beds, it's about 500 square meters. So the total area that we can plant is going to be about 3,500 square meters. The standard planting spacing for tomatoes is about 2 plants in a square meter. That means that 2 plants per square meter times the 4 is about 3,500. Let's say 4,000, but it's about 3,500 times 2. That's 7,000. Forget my numbers. I was thinking about the lettuce whilst doing this. So it's about 7,000 plants we can have per acre. Next slide. The math is right. The numbers are kind of rough. Let's assume that we're going to have a yield of about 3 kilograms per plant. Most of the tomatoes we are planting now can give you a yield of about 6 to 10 kilograms per acre. I'm just going to use 3. Okay. Now, next slide. It's tomatoes. Forget about the lettuce. I just changed it again. So usually we sell the tomatoes for about 7, 8, 9, 10 kilograms per kilo. It's Ghana cedis per kilogram. So, but I'm going to use 4 Ghana cedis. That is the lowest you can go. So if we decide to harvest an acre of tomatoes, we multiply the 4 Ghana cedis by the 7,000 plants by 3 kilograms per plant. That gives you 84,000 Ghana cedis per acre. And the tomatoes takes about 3 to 6 months for gestation. Let's even assume 6 months. We planted a whole acre of cocoa and we got about $300. That's about almost 1,500, or let me say 2,000 Ghana cedis. Yet still an acre of tomatoes gives us 84,000, even trying to go with the low numbers. Why are we still focused on cocoa? That is my question. Assuming total expenses of 24,000, that means 10,000 for wages, because I'm going to have even 5 farmers per acre, which is way above my standard. 2,000 for land preparation, 2,000 for seeds, and an extra 10,000, which is going to go for miscellaneous expenses like drip irrigation and water and fertilizer. That will bring our profits all the way to about 60,000 Ghana cedis. Next slide. So, doing the profit margin, back please, it gives us about 71% of gross profit margin if we do it right. Question becomes, why is everybody not doing it? Yes, tomatoes is kind of difficult to handle because you got to deal with pests and other things, and you got to take your time with it. It takes time to study it. It takes time to master it. But when you master it, it gives you great profit. People just don't have the patience anymore. According to world statistics from the microtrends.net, the average net profit for mining of gold is 5.25%. It makes you wonder why everybody is trying to rush for gold. In our chasing of gold in the country of Ghana, we are destroying water bodies, we are destroying our farms to try and gain a 5.25% in comparison to a 71.4%. The next slide is going to show you, I can send you the link, I'll send it to the group chat right now, whereby it tells you the most profitable crops in the world. Number 1, the big light brown one is the coca plant for cocaine. The light green one is a very popular one that most of you may know about it and might even know, might have used it before. That is weed, THC. The next big green one we're looking at down there is opioid. So those three, of course, these numbers are per square kilometer. The next one, which is the red one, you see that one, the next biggest profit, most profitable crop in the world is tomatoes right there. Crops like cocoa don't even make the list. Maize don't make the list. The crops that make the list, we don't produce. The ones that don't make the list are the ones that we Ghanaians focus our minds on. And that is what even the banks will give you funding for, which beats my imagination. But the ones that gives the most profits, we don't even focus our minds on. This is where our change of thinking should come from. Next slide. Based on that, if you go on the same site I told you about on the numbers, you can see the margin I gave you for the gold. Because sometimes if you do the gold properly and you're mining with all the equipment you need to mine and stuff like that and expenses, you're going to have a profit margin of just 5.2% of net profit margin. Even Anglo Gold even makes losses on some of their years of production. Based on that, next slide. So how do we, as old Achimotans, make it happen and help change Ghana, help take Ghana beyond age, so that every time we are going to borrow money, we can start producing to start making money so that we can also become a world superpower. How do we do that? Number one, next slide. We got to have a plan. You know, it was funny. We had a guy yesterday. I was actually, he called a friend of mine in Houston and told a friend that, oh, he's been trying to reach me several times and I don't even pick up my call. And I told my friend that I've picked up his call several times, but what he's telling me doesn't make any sense. So it got to a point I even stopped picking up his call, because when I tell him that what he's saying, you know what? The guy was like, let's just call this guy online right now and talk to him. I said, fine. We do a three-way call, and this guy is he claims he's one of the biggest rice producers in Ghana. So I asked him a simple question. How much land do you have? It's like, I have 30,000 acres. I'm like, where is the land? It's like, it's in Oti region. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I'm like, okay, do you have any land documentation of, proof that you own that land? He's like, no. So I'm like, you don't have any land documentation. How do you know it is 30,000 acres? And he has not even thought about that before. It's like, oh, because the chiefs told me it's 30,000 acres. I'm like, you listen to the chiefs? How do they even know they have 30,000 acres without any land documentation? There is no proof of the fact that you have 30,000 acres. You should have seen my guy from Houston on the phone like, oh my God. So you don't even have the land. He came to, because he believed that the guy had 30,000 acres of rice farms. So the guy goes on to say that, look, I'm about to get some funding from ADB for about $3.34 million. ADB going to fund you $3.34 million for not even having a piece of land with any documentation? He says, yes, it's because I know people there. Now, that could be a problem. If people in Ghana are funding projects like that with no proof, no evidence, and possibly they might get a funding. I don't know if it's going to get a funding or not, but if they get a funding, and then sometimes people like you who may have the land, have everything in all your ducks in a row, might not get a funding, where are we taking our country? That is a good question we should ask ourselves. I even asked him a simple question like, okay, since you say claim you do rice, what is your yield per acre? He says, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean by you don't know? Are you not a farmer yourself? He said, no, I'm just a CEO, and you can talk to my manager. So I called the manager in Ghana. I asked him the same question. What is your yield per acre for the rice you produce yourselves? What kind of rice do you produce? He said, basmati rice. So I asked him, what is your yield per acre? He doesn't even know. So what are you producing? So how is ADB going to give you $3.34 million when you don't even know your numbers? And these things happen in Ghana day in and day out. These are the kind of things that we should solve as a country. Educate our people to know how to come up with a good plan. Let the plan be solid. Don't just give them loans because they are your friends or they are your girlfriends or they are your boyfriends or they are connected to a minister. And I've seen it happen before. I saw it live, whereby a minister just called and said, oh, go to this place, go get the funding you need, without even asking the person for even a plan. I saw it myself live. I can't say these things because you don't know who's going to come and get you. You get my point? These are the things that we should solve ourselves as Africans. Apart from the plan, what do we do next? Next slide. We got to have a good setup. Same story I'm talking about, this same guy. This guy claims he owns one of the biggest rice, labels in Ghana. And he himself is the CEO, 100% owner of the business, and controls everything. There is no board for the business. But you're not even set up right. Who is going to give you any funding? He said, oh, I have my own connections. I have my own favor. And that thing was beginning to get me angry. I'm like, if people like him are going to get funding, and some people like us can't even get funding, where are we going as a country? You don't even have a board. You've not even set up your business right. Most of the farms in Ghana are not even set up as farms. They don't even exist. Everybody just takes a cutlass and hoe and goes to set up and just starts to, clear a piece of land and they are going. Most of them, about 95% of the farms in Ghana are not even registered. So how can you even tax them? So if you cannot tax them for tax revenues, then guess who bears the burden of the tax revenue? And the taxes keep going up because we're going to be short of taxes every year because people are not even being able to pay their taxes well because they are not even registered. So you got to set up well. What's next? Next slide. And you got to build a solid team. Now, this is where the major issue is. I watched a few programs on TV by Honorable Kennedy Japan on something called the attitude. The attitude of the Ghanaian worker is something else. Oh my God. The amount of money I have thrown away because of a Ghanaian's attitude. So now we virtually have a manager who is from Zimbabwe who is making things run well. Most of the Ghanaian managers are hired or flop. They go to the farm and they want to go and sleep, or they want to go and do it. They are the manager, so they put their hands in their pockets, or they show up to work at night, 10 o'clock in the morning. God being good, this guy from Zimbabwe, by 5 o'clock is up, by 5:10 is knocking on everybody's door to get up. By 6 o'clock, everybody's on the farm. 6 days a week. He himself is leading the working team. So one day, one of the old managers called me and said, Sam, where did you get this guy from? Because nobody can play lazy around him because he himself is working. So you can't be lazy. This guy is accountable. He will give you Excel spreadsheets of everything, every single pin he buys with the money. He doesn't even want to take cash. He wants everything to go to the bank. These are people you can't find. So you got to build a team and train them well. But we got to also fix our attitude in Ghana about work ethics because from the little I saw and what I've experienced myself, it's not good. So we got to fix that part also. I had the same issue with the first farm we started in Ghana, and it almost collapsed the first farm. Zimbabwe was great because the workers there can work. And then COVID kind of took us down big time. But now we are building back up, and now the team is being on a roll. They are working nonstop. They work like crazy. They're like machines. We thank God for that. We are moving on. Next slide. Find and build a good, solid team. Now you got to do your research. How can you come and stand in front of somebody trying to get funded when you don't even know your own numbers? We're trying to build Ghana. We're trying to get things done right. You want to go and, like an example, there were some guys who came and approached us. We're like, you know what? We want to give you guys some a factory to produce cassava starch. It's going to cost about between $5 to $7 million. You're going to pay back in 5 years, but don't worry, you don't have to pay back now. We'll get a funding like 80% from China, and I think 20% from Stanbic Bank or something like that. I said, okay. So I put my manager on the phone. Another smart guy. That guy is so smart. Another stockbroker from South Africa. So he's very smart. So both of us were on the phone with these guys. And we told them, asked the first question, have you guys even farmed cassava before? We're like, no, but we know the numbers. I'm like, okay. And they just started by telling us that, you know what? You can actually make 6,000 tons of cassava a year from this machine. 6,000 tons. And then we have a ready buyer in China to buy the cassava starch from you at $485 a ton. I'm like, okay. I listened and I asked questions now. And I'm like, okay, let me ask some few questions. First question, how many tons of cassava do I need to produce 1 ton of cassava starch? They said you need 4 tons of cassava, starch. I said, fine. And I asked them again, how many tons of cassava can I produce on 1 acre? They said 8 to 10 tons. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll use 8 tons since I want to go lower. The 8 tons means that I can only produce 2 tons of cassava starch. I'm like, okay. And I asked them, the cassava they want us to plant, what is the gestation period of that cassava? And we're like, oh yeah, this one is actually the factory industrial cassava, so it takes 1 year. So I said, okay, so for 1 year, 1 acre, I'm going to make about $1,000 for 1 acre, 1 year. And I'm like, come on, get out of here. I can go plant cabbages and make that money way more than that in 1 acre. Like I just showed you on tomatoes. Don't be easily caught in the scheme of foreign exchange, because anybody will be caught in the same scheme and be like, you know what? Oh, that's foreign money. I'm going to get dollars. No, forget about dollars. Do your numbers and do your research. Because if you hadn't done our research and even asked questions, you would have just gotten us into a trap. But guess what? Now we have to pay the loan back in 5 years. It's a 10% interest loan in dollars. Imagine. We're going to be paying back most about $1 million a year. People, and they were shocked that we're thinking like we're, you know, I was asking the questions and was like, you know what? I will go to my boss and get back to you. They went and got their bosses and it was even worse. So we drilled them like crazy for them to realize that their whole plan was bogus. Secondly, if they don't even produce the land for us. So ask them, if it's that profitable for you to make us do this thing, why don't you go and do it yourselves? They're like, oh no, we are not farmers. I'm like, good. That's why you can come and tell me this bogus story. So do your research. And in the end, it's going to help you. Next slide. My manager keeps cutting in with the calls, but don't worry, I'll get to him. Land. I'm happy I mentioned the land issues. Ghana and land issues. Oh my God. You and I all know that. It's the worst thing ever in history. That is why, based on my latest research and let me say the word experience, I will always rent my land out first. Because if there's any litigation on the land, after second or third year, you will know. But if you go and buy the land, there's litigation on the land, you've already thrown your money away. So your money is gone. Secondly, if the land is not even viable for planting the crops you want to plant, and you bought the land, you are stuck with the land. But if the land is not good enough and you rent the land out, you can always move to another piece of land. Always make sure you are getting the right piece of land. Test the land, do your soil test and stuff like that, and make sure you are getting the right amount of benefits from the soil than just buying the piece of land, which will take you a longer time. Big lesson learned, lots of money saved. You can save anybody who wants to jump in there too. Next slide. Now, this one part that most people actually always skip, the process. The process, 3P success. The people, the product, and the process. All the three got to line up. You got to have the right people, the right products. But if the process is broken, guess what? You will never take off. You can have a good product. People might like it. You can have the right team to work on it. But if you don't have the right methodology of how to go about it, forget about even doing that business. The importance of the process. Let me give an example. Do you know sometimes in Ghana, like even like now, I'm going to use my farm example for as an example. The one we have is in Akuse. If my manager is so good, I like him for that. If even he wants to take a fruit on the farm to the house, he will pay for it with his own money and take that fruit to the house. Why? He's trying to teach the people we got to follow a process still. We harvest everything, we count everything, we weigh everything before we even sell it. This never happened with my Ghanaian managers. But this guy, amazing. We got to have a process in place so that in case the owner of the business goes away, guess what? The business can still run. Steve Jobs is gone, but Apple is still running. Bill Gates resigned from Microsoft, but they are still running because they have a good process in place. We got to set up our own good processes so that at least we can keep the businesses going and keep the economy also booming. Next slide. Now, this is more about plant spacing and stuff like that because it's very important to me. Why? Let me go back to my example of maize and maize planted in America and maize planted in Ghana. The average American farmer is going to make you about 4 to 5 tons of maize per acre. The average Ghanaian farmer makes you about 1 to 2 tons an acre. Why? In Ghana, you plant your maize, you dig the ground, you put the maize in, you stretch your leg, dig the ground again, put your maize in. So we are spacing our maize by like almost 70 to 100 centimeters apart. In America, they space their maize by 8 to 12 inches apart on the columns and about 24 inches apart on the rows. That means that they can plant about almost 5 to 6 times more maize on the same acreage than us in Ghana. When we know these things, we're not going to waste our time. And we're going to make sure we are planting to ensure that we are actually aiming for profitability. That is the key thing. The whole idea is profitability. So know your plant spacing and stuff like that. Next slide. Right equipment. Right equipment, right equipment, right equipment. Because of plant spacing, I talked about previously, we got to find the kind of right equipment to use. So I expected people like the Ministry of Agriculture, if they want to subsidize farming, to also subsidize with like providing the right equipment for these farmers, not just only in supplying fertilizers, but also give it to like cooperatives to use. What do I mean? Like the maize farmers, start giving them the maize planters like used in America so they can plant their maize using the right maize planting space methods. They can plant even their vegetables using the vegetable plant spacing methods so they can actually have higher yields. These are the things we can do to help Ghana move forward. Because regardless of what we do, if we cannot use the right plants, right equipment, we're always going to be behind the Western countries and the Chinese. Those guys develop machines on a daily basis nonstop. They take American machines and they photocopy it so good, it becomes even better than the original and cheaper. So now people are going to in China to go and get equipment to come to Ghana to farm with. Fine, let's get them and use them right. But this is what I expect some of the government sectors to do. Provide them with the right equipment so that they can be able to do the work right. Next slide. Have a good planting cycle. What do I mean by that? Most Ghanaians plant seasonally. So Ghana's price fluctuation is the worst in history. Today, summertime, tomatoes are about almost 20 Ghana cedis a kilogram. Then rainy season time is like 5 Ghana cedis a kilogram because we plant based on the rain. And because of that, if one year comes and there's no rain, we are stuck. Have a planting cycle whereby we can start planting on a monthly basis or every 2 months. We plant some so that there will always be supply. Because the shortage of supply is what causes more of us to import. If there's always supply, we're going to cut down on our imports and let the supply be constant. So start to adopt methods like irrigation. But nowadays, even irrigation is becoming a problem because our water bodies are being messed up. Because most people, it's best agriculture to use running water than to use like boreholes. because running water is like mostly very, very good for planting. But now most of the running water is all polluted with all these like, galamsey work going on. So we plead that some of these things are the things that we got to stop so that the country can move forward. Because if agriculture is done right, every other sector will boom. So find a good planting cycle so that we can have a constant supply. Next slide. And then we got to know how to sell. This is where some of us should come in. We, the educated ones especially, got to train these farmers on how to sell your produce. Because another major issue we have in Ghana is people can't even know where to sell their produce and how to sell it. People like our main guy, Chris Mo, can develop, apps whereby farmers can go on it and know where to get buyers to buy their produce and have, logistics be able to go there and pick it up. There's a guy who developed an app called Agro Center. They only focus on buying grains. So it's good. They got about a $500,000 investment from a seed fund, which are people like that I respect because they are doing the right thing. So what they do is that they are able to, the farmer can just take a picture of their harvest, estimate the yield, and put it on that app, and then they get a buyer to come and buy it from them, the farm, so they don't lose out. These are the things we got to look at and then develop for our farmers, our farming sector, to grow. Next slide. Profit accountability. We did our audit report about a few months ago. We are about to do for the 2020. We are accountants and the auditors are still on it. Yes, it's good to sometimes always be accountable. That's one thing about most Ghanaian companies. Because we're not accountable, we are always scared of the tax man. No, we got to do the books. Get an accountant, record everything that you spend, and record any money that comes in. Try and use the banking systems so that even if you lose all your accounts, the banking system can track everything going on. Try and pay everything from the banks. We can move on from there. And that is where most people do, because sometimes the manager himself or the owner wants to come to the farm, family, and come and pocket the money in cash and take it away. We can't do that anymore. This is now a business. We got to treat it like a business and become accountable. Accountability starts with all of us. Next slide. And by the way, people may ask questions like, do we still have an opportunity to still make grounds in export industries or with the farming sector, since like they're importing so much? Yes, there's still a huge industry. So back to tomatoes again. Look at tomatoes imports. The United States alone imports $2.5 billion of tomatoes. Now the number has gone up, it's gone higher, way higher. Germany, 1.5 billion. So Ghana can start looking into a better cash crop to be sending away. This will take us less land. And if we do it right and get all the agronomy right, we're in big business. Why are we focused on things that don't give us enough money? Let's focus on the things that will get us more money. Next slide. All these countries, look at the amount of exports they do for tomatoes alone. These are just fresh tomatoes. And the source is the world is right there. You can see the link. Check it out. There's still opportunities. We can do it. We can become a powerhouse in Africa for agriculture. You get a point. Next slide. Let's make a difference, guys. We are more honest. We have bankers, we have lawyers, we got to use it all and help boost the agricultural sector up. Help promote the agricultural sector, because guess what? When we eat right, we plant right, and we eat right, we can create more jobs in the transportation industry, in the clothing industry, in the restaurant industries. If it's even going to affect our tourism industries. And then it's also going to affect our health industry, so that even with the few hospitals we have, we can be able to take care of our people, because less people are going to get sick. That is the importance of agriculture. So, of course, Ghana is beyond, if we're going to try and do Ghana beyond 8, We're going to try and make sure that we are taking less aid. But we got to start with agriculture. It can take us out of our misery if we work and do it right. Next slide. You have any questions, you can visit my website and ask any questions you want to ask, book appointment with us. We'll come help you on your farm. We don't charge anything to help people on their farms. We only take a percentage of the profit. So it's like we are working together in a partnership. I mean, you want anything to do with questions and answers, we got you at any point in time. Reach out to us and we're going to help you. So this concludes my presentation. I know there are some questions you can ask me and I'm here for you.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm going to open the floor for anybody who has any questions to be able to ask.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, and you may have answered some of these. I joined a bit late, and this is Norris, by the way.
Wonderful, Norris. Happy birthday.
Thank you. So, you know, a lot of the advantages I see, I mean, up here, I live closer to the countryside than the city, and I always admire these farms that I see. Huge farm, yes. You know, you can't see beyond them. And a lot of the advantages I see is mechanization. I know you touched upon it. I thought you were going to go deeper. I mean, you mentioned about talking to, you know, ministers and things like that. I just want to know how much they were able to tell you, in the sense that, you know, you talked about, for instance, a good example you made was the output Americans can get per acreage for maize compared to Ghana, how we stretch our legs and plant. And as soon as you started, I was thinking, these guys use machines. So, you know, these are the reasons why we are in trouble. And we've been, you mentioned Ghana, people talk about the fact that, again, sorry, I may be ranting because this is very close to my heart. You mentioned Ghana, people talk about the fact that it's an agricultural company. We walk around, we see all these guys lined up on the streets in Accra looking for jobs. Everybody's running out of the city. It's like they're running away from gold, running away from, you know, opportunities to make money. You know, How much are they putting into, number one, and, you know, ensuring that the right equipment is available, even is at the subsidized cost for farmers? I mean, this is the role government can play. Folks talk about private sector. That's great. I mean, in my field, you talk about medicine, there are a lot of good professionals here in Ghana. They don't bother to go back to Ghana because there are certain things that as an individual, you just can't afford to, you know, raise the funds and produce yourself, be it equipment and things like that. So I just want to know how much, you know, these ministers, these government people are invested in producing or helping people get the right equipment. You talked about water sources. You walk around and there's huge irrigation systems. You know, you see them, you know, on these tracks, they roll around the farms, watering, things like that. You know, and you don't see any water body in these areas. You know, I live in the Midwest. We are not near, I mean, we have the Great Lakes, but we are not near a lot of water bodies. But people find a way of watering their farms, keeping things going and all that. So how much mechanization is going on in Ghana and how serious are we about it?
Good question, Norris. I mean, look, this thing has actually bothered me for a while now. Some time ago, 6 years ago, Ghana got some tractors from Japan, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to be misquoted, but it was Japan. We're speaking to our farm consultants, and we wanted to get one of the tractors for our farm. We went to the Ministry of Agri and we couldn't get it. This guy was an Israeli. The Israeli told us, he laughed at us when we came back and said, you know what, you guys are not serious. If you want to go and get the farm for Ministry of Agri, he was actually showing us how to get equipment from the Ministry of Agri. At that point in time, he said he should have gone dressed in Batakari because there were Northerners there. Because we have actually used tribalism, even in Ghana, just to even obtain equipment. So he should have gone in Batakari to go and stand there, and then just based on that, we'll get the equipment. Even after the equipment were given out, there were some of them that were parked in people's garages in Accra, not on a farm, the tractors. My brother, some of the things that goes on in Ghana, I mean, you can't even imagine it. The tractors for the villagers to farm with were parked in people's garages in Accra. But these things we're talking about, they are beginning to come into Ghana a lot for the mechanization. There's a company called AKORA93. They are very good. They are beginning to bring equipment in, like, planters and tractors to start to do rental for most farmers now. So I think they are beginning to see the light, and these things will switch very soon if we take it more seriously. So the government funding, to me, should have gone more into at least equipment where you get these tractors, you get these planters, so that an area of like, let's say maize farmers, it could be 10 farmers. Tractor comes there, plows their land and plants all their maize for them. It's up to them to take care of their maize. You can have the harvester go behind their back and go harvest their maize for them. These are things we are still not doing in Ghana. Because if you look at the trend of the political scene in Ghana, it's so porous to the extent that sometimes you realize that sometimes some of them don't even really want things to work in their counties. So that during election time, they can use that as an advantage to go and bring something to say, I brought you water or I brought you this tractor. A tractor should not be anything so big that it can actually make it, you can politicize it. And that's what kind of hurts everybody. And I feel your pain. I mean, it's dear to your heart and it's dear to my heart. Believe me, the amount of money I have blown in Ghana because of this, but I don't give up because I have a feeling that there is hope. We're going to changing Ghana takes each and every one of us. So, I mean, now we are beginning to see some light ahead of the tunnel, and we're going to continue pushing till we see the light. So I agree with you. We need those equipments, and I can list some of the equipments for you guys to see in case we have people here who can be able to help bring them in or start renting those equipments out. So, I mean, to your question again, there's a company in Ghana called Trot Tractor. They are doing very well. So it's like an app. You go there, you log in, and then if you're a farmer, you want your farm to be, plowed, you arrange with them, they come, they plow. It's like an Uber for like Uber for tractors. Come and plow your land, and then they go. So at least things are beginning to move, but they are not as major as we expect it to be. But we got to keep fighting. But these are questions that people in the, governments can help us. I don't know, possibly people like Peter Kane, I don't know, might have more answers to give than I may have. I'm fighting to see how best we can use this agricultural, sector to boost the economy as much as we can. Great question. I love that.
Yeah, I think Teresa has her hand up.
Okay.
Boss, I'm not in government.
Samuel, thank you so much. I'm curious to hear what Peter King says, but back to what you've presented. I mean, it was very interesting to note that we import about 1 billion worth of tomatoes from.
Tin tomatoes, not even the fresh tomatoes. That's tin tomatoes only.
It's mind-boggling. Now, the question when I talk about these issues in international economics, what we mention is the idea of comparative advantage, which you mentioned. Obviously, if anybody is considering importing a good, then of course it's probably going to be cheaper than it is in the country. If you have a comparative advantage, it just means that the cost of it is lower compared to other producers. So I'm actually curious to know which country has the highest number of exports going out in terms of tomatoes. I mean, I'm curious to know that because again, the question is, we know that government is not creating the environment that will help most people to get into tomato farming. And so if a private person is considering going into farming, the question is, how do you beat those already in the international markets that are selling this at the most cheapest level? Because any person going into the shop or to the market to purchase tomatoes is looking at which one is the cheapest. I do know that people will go to ShopRite, shop for tomatoes. When I'm in Ghana, I usually will go there because sometimes I'm like, okay, I want something that is clean. I can't go to the market to go and, bend and then look for tomatoes and the like. But obviously, if we are able to do something to bring down the prices significantly, then there's going to be a demand for what we are producing in Ghana. So I'm just curious to know, knowing very well that we can't get government to act immediately and create that environment to bring down the cost, what can a private person do and make sure that you are coming into the market and you have a comparative advantage and be able to get Ghana out of this, situation that we find ourselves in?
That's a great question. And I mean, first things first, most of the tin tomatoes come from China anyway. This is the reason why they can produce at a cheaper quality. One, they have cheaper electricity. China pays about 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. Ghana, for factories especially, I mean, Peter King knows, you've done some research into energy some time ago. We are paying about close to 25 to 35 cents a kilowatt hour. Most Ghanaian factories will only open for 8 hours. The workers will work for only 6 or 5 hours. They'll spend the other times smoking, drinking, and smoking weed or something like that. Most Chinese firms are going to open for about almost 24 hours, 3 shifts. So in the same vicinity, in the same square footage, they are producing more than we can produce. So in the end, their comparative advantage will cripple any of their competitors, especially in the area like Ghana. So the only way that the Ghanaian factory can compete is to buy the tomatoes at so low a value from the farmers. So now they're going to disadvantage our own farmers just to be able to compete. An example, I have a good one, because this same factory that I talked about, I don't want to mention the name, they wanted to buy the tomatoes from the farmers at 1 Ghana cedis a kilo. So that's the only way they can break even.
Wow.
Yes, 1 Ghana cedis a kilo. So how can the farmer survive? These are small-scale farmers. You see my point I'm trying to drive at. So usually, like things like factory setups should actually rather attract a lower tariff rate for electricity, because Ghana, most of our power used to be used by Valco, if I'm not mistaken, and then most of these metal companies. But we can channel some of that energy into the agricultural sector. But you can't even really blame them, because the cost of producing that power alone, since most of them are like thermal, we have the hydro, but the thermal plant, I think we are producing at around almost 10 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. I don't know if I'm right, Peter King. We should know the numbers by now. So we can't even compete.
They produced it at 7 and was being sold at 12.
Okay, 12.
Yeah.
But I know for most factories, they are paying about 20 or more, because I know for solar, you pay about 20 or more for solar.
No, they sell for 12, then ECG will charge about 21.
Got it. Yeah, 21. That's the charge. Yeah. So how can we compete with the Chinese? We are working less hours in the day, at the same time paying high tariffs. So we can't even meet that, first hurdle before we flood ourselves. So we need to work on possibly a government intervention to actually, just for only value added, factories, we can be able to at least give them a lower tariff and at least an incentive for the first 3 or 4 years, so that they can produce more and compete out these Chinese or the competition. So those are the best thing to do.
Thank you so much. I mean, I just get so frustrated about it in the sense that, I mean, look at the farmer who is going to have to sell it at a very cheap, rate, and then obviously cannot make as much profit. How do we incentivize them to go and produce more, And so it's just frustrating that if government cannot help with this issue, a private person thinking of profitability is definitely not going to be willing to get into it.
Exactly.
Has that answered your question, Tessa?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just frustrated.
Okay, I'll ask Kwesi Nkrumah to unmute and then ask his question, and then Peter King will come to you after.
Oh, thank you very much. I must first of all thank Chris Moore, who gave me an invitation to join this platform, even though I'm not one of you, and he knows how passionate I am when it comes to agriculture. I want to ask a question. It's good you talked about these vegetables. I myself, I want to go into vegetable production, tomato, lettuce, cabbage. And what I want to do is to dig or do boreholes and do drip irrigation. Now, I've been thinking about the water, how the impact can the water that that will come from the what do you call the borehole, can it have an effect on these vegetables? And if so, do you know any institution in Ghana where I can go and after I've done my boreholes, they will come and test, or before I would invest in the borehole drilling, they will come and test the water quality to see that it will be suitable for such vegetable production. Because if I invest in the boreholes and I invest in the land prepare and I start watering my plants with this borehole water, and at the end of the day, it has an effect on the plant. It means the whole investment has gone wasted. So I want to find out if you know of any institution that can do the water, that can test the water for me. I'll appreciate it.
Yes, good question. There are lots of institutions in Ghana that do that. Even most of the people who do the boreholes themselves are able to test for the water, but I got to find the right borehole drilling company. The right ones will charge you a bit higher, but their work is guaranteed. We paid about 15,000 Ghana cedis for a borehole for our drip irrigation. But after the water is drilled, you got to make sure you test the water to make sure that the salt content is not too high and there are no bacteria in the water, so that at least it doesn't affect the plants when you are using the water to get it watered. Sometimes you can also test the water in the area from some of the open ponds to know how good or bad the water will be like. I have a few contacts I can send you. I will send it to Chris Moore, and then you can try and get him to you so that you can be able to contact them yourself, and then they can be able to come and help drill your boreholes for you. So, but if you drill anything above like 100 meters deep, most of the time the water is not that bad. For 100 meters deep and going. And for vegetables, yes, it's a good thing to get into, find your market first and then get into it, and you can't go wrong. But first of all, got to be aware it's going to be a long road. No matter how good of a farmer you are, your first 2 or 3 harvests might not come out right because you're still going to learn from the land. Something is going to go wrong. Just don't give up. That is where most people fail, because they give up. So always plan for the first 2 or 3 harvests. Something might go wrong before your 4th harvest is going to be a good success. So don't plan too many. Start on a small scale and then increase as you go on, and you learn alongside, the experiences.
Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that.
Peter King.
I think Chappie is got the handout.
Chappie before Peter King.
You don't get a question now.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So my interest, Sami, is more in the area of financing agriculture investments. I think we pretty much have seen what Agric Development Bank has become, because it's pretty much gone into, how do you call it, commercial banking, and I don't know what the focus of it. I don't know what its mandate is, whether it's still an Agric Development Bank or is chasing Stanbic and Stanchart and the Barclays and co in Accra. Because if you look at agricultural investment, I don't really have a lot of experience in that area, but from a finance background perspective, I realized that getting funding is tricky. Agriculture is as you said, is a very tricky business. You may start and your first 2-3 yields will not turn out, so people tend to shy away from funding agriculture investments. What do you think should be the way forward for us as a country in terms of that? I'll just drop it. I'm really impressed with our senior, Jerry Parks. He runs a private equity firm called Njaro Investments. Their focus is just the agribusiness value chain, and I know they've closed exited a number of transactions, which has been quite successful. But as a country, we always say that agriculture is the mainstay of our economy. It employs 60% of our labor force. But in terms of investments, I don't think I don't think there's an institution where you can say that, look, these people have, I think one of the challenges as well is to get people who understand what the agribusiness value chain, so that when they are advising people on investments, they have experience and they have the know-how. Like I said, what do you think is the way forward? Because that is also a critical part of agriculture, getting the right funding partners to be able to move your dream or your agribusiness dream forward.
You know what, Chappie, that's a great question. You know, that's one issue that we've been dealing with for a while. I mean, when we started our farming ventures, we had lots of people who approached us to give us funding. Now, this way I have the problem with people giving funding. They always want to give you funding that is in the millions of dollars, because possibly paying back is also a lot of money. And sometimes those people are more interested in their interests that they're going to get out of the whole big deal than you, the farmer itself. So I barely got any funding when we started farming because everybody wanted to give me millions. And I said, no, I don't need millions. I only need just even less than $100,000. And nobody even jumped in, because to them, one of them just told me the truth and said, the amount of time it takes to do $100,000 funding is the same time to do a $10 million funding. So as a broker, they are more interested in the $10 million funds, which I respect. I mean, so in the end, they will chase people who will actually give them the bigger commissions than the smaller ones. And most of the time, the smaller ones are the ones who are trying to tell you the truth, that you may fail and learn along the way and be able to come back and, you know, resolve it. So what we can do in the finance sector is to be able to, there are a few companies like Quidex, Grow For Me, who are helping these small scale farmers be able to still get some funding. But most of them are like short-term funding. Nobody is giving farmers like any major long-term funding apart from Agri Development Bank. But they too, I don't blame them, because most of the funds they gave out to these farmers who were uneducated, you know how Ghanaian attitude is. They chopped their money and they had no accountability. Even though they tried to go there with extension officers to try and, you know, supervise their farms, they chopped their money anyway still. So what we got to do is that we got to go back to the beginning and try and develop proper business plans. Let the conversation between the owners of the business and the funding agencies be very detailed. They can go back and forth, ask questions, and then they can determine to know if the business is going to succeed or fail based on the knowledge of the owners of the business. This will help a whole lot, because it's been one of our major issues, getting funding. So most of the things have to be self-funded. I mean, people like us are not like, you know, the rich people like Chris Mo and Co, who have millions in the bank. We have to, Charlie, you know, use military money to be funding farm projects. So we cannot even grow as fast as we want to grow, because nobody wants to give you the few tens of thousands. We want to give you only millions. So that is one area I think people like you, Chappie, can look into and see how we might be able to, you know, take it to the next level. I spoke to a few companies in Ghana some time ago, and like No Fund and Co. They said, oh no, we only do $2-3 million and above. I'm like, come on, I don't want that, because I want something that at least if the farm fails, I can pay you back. I don't want to owe anybody. You get my point? That is that's my mentality. But people just will go and borrow money and they don't pay back and they don't care. No, I care. I want to take care of your money. So that's where the problem is.
Okay. Yeah.
Sam, I think you mentioned this management, the farm management problem that we have.
Yes.
Where you have brought in a farm manager from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Because you can't seem to find any Ghanaian that's able to do the work to that level
yes.
that you want. And the last time Peter King was saying a similar thing, where he's also having, or he's had issues in the past where he's not able to find people who are able to do what the job requires.
Yeah.
How do we get our people to that level where we can get them ready for such responsibility?
Good question. You know, what we started doing as More Profitable Than Gold, our company, was to even train like farm managers. So our aim before COVID hit was to be training, like have a training school for farm managers. We haven't given up on that. We're going to continue doing that. Just to train them, we did a one-day course, which people were very, very impressed. The comments were like, we've never seen this before. We even had a lecturer who was from the University of Ghana Agric department come and say, wow, I have never seen this side of Agric before for a one-day class. So we realized that based on the comments we received, it would be good to develop a whole school system just on how to train farm managers. Because farm management is different from being a farmer. Anybody can take a cutlass and go and farm. You can go and cut your grass behind your backyard. But farm management has a lot to do with understanding the business side of it, understanding how to use softwares. Because even like now on our farm, we run our own enterprise resource planning system, an ERP software, an accounting human resource software system, which is cloud-based. So I can see all the accounts which is going on the farm. I know the payroll going out, everything is going on. So we can see all that. And you need a farm manager that is very knowledgeable in all these areas. Also a farm manager who understands the numbers, not just knowing about the plants, but knowing how to be able to estimate yields, give you numbers on, the number of fertilizer you need, or bags of corn you need, or amount of, water we need, so that we can be able to, talk and dialogue and be able to give you accounts on a daily and a weekly basis. Also, it's also dependent on the owner to be communicating with the farm manager constantly, because the lack of communication will actually cause them to become also, the Ghanaian attitude will set in. The manager and I, we talk like 3 times a day. We have WhatsApp now, so you can talk to anybody in the world. He's been calling me like 3 times, even whilst I'm on this Zoom call, because we are always talking, asking numbers. I can ask the same question 100 times to see if you give me a different answer. So the owner should also be involved with the management and work hand in hand to ensure we get great success. Don't treat them like employees, treat them like part of your business, because let them feel they own a part of it. Because what I did was that every manager, every major player also gets shares in the business. So they're also part of the business themselves. But we got to train them. So what we're going to do is that after this COVID whole thing gets away, we're going to actually set up a whole school on its own and train them, set up, the farm we have now, we are trying to turn that farm into like a school farm, whereby they come to the place and learn how to manage a farm properly. And then from there, they can go and become farm managers.
That's really, really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Anybody else has any questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
I think the last portion you mentioned highlights the things talked about in next level education.
Yep.
About how we can liaise with, definite companies, bringing in technical folks to learning on the job and things like that. So, there's a huge opportunity, and hopefully we can together, rebrand Ghana and move us forward.
Oh, yes. Yes, we can.
Chappie.
Samuel.
Yes.
Another question, another area of interest. Can you throw some light on sugar and the value chain? For instance, Ghana, we had the Commander Sugar Factory,
yes.
But apparently we set up a factory, like you said, with the tomato one. We
yes.
did not have the input sugar cane to run the factory. How profitable is the sugarcane value chain in terms of from the sugarcane to the actual sugar? Can you throw some light on that?
Yes, sugarcane is also kind of profitable, not as profitable as some of the vegetables, but I mean, based on the quantities, sometimes the quantities that you produce also becomes so many to the extent that it actually becomes profitable. So with sugarcane farming, you got to make sure it's all about large quantities. You cannot farm a 2-acre farm of sugarcane and try to make a profit. You might lose out. So go 50, 100, 150 acres. Based on that, you might be able to supply to the factory at a good price for them to produce the sugar. Now, this is where we got to come in. The Commander Sugar Factory was kind of built right because it actually built even a plant by the factory where they're going to use the waste from the Commander Sugar Factory to run the plant. It was a unique plant which was going to use the waste to run the plant. I don't know how that did not take off, because that would have actually been able to be like self-sustaining, because one of the major issues that affect the prices of our locally produced goods is our cost of production, because in the end it goes up high. So if that would have been good, because we could have actually reduced our cost of production so that we can be able to compete with the imported sugar. So the only way is to try, number one, try and get large acres of sugarcane planted. Two, try and also ensure that we are also on the factory, we got to at least do 2 shifts to become more profitable. Because an example, you work 8 hours a day, the factory is left bare for 16 hours. No, the factory is not a human being. You can use the factory over and over and over again. So we can actually run 2 shifts so that we can be able to maximize on the yield of the sugar coming out, which will reduce our costs, whereby in the end, we can actually have a competitive advantage to the imported ones. In the end, you're going to create jobs. You're going to have a lot of transportation business all opened up because of this factory of sugar going well. But because they did it without actually thinking of planting the sugarcane first, that became a big fiasco. So they had to go and spend more money to go and fix that factory to get it back running again. I don't know if it's still running now. I have no idea. I got to find out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, welcome.
Edwin, you need to unmute. Edwin, you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, big boss Edwin.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. My question is, what are your thoughts on genetically modified plants? You know, most Western countries are now using genetically modified plants where they give higher yields and they are resistant to pests. So what are your thoughts on genetically modified plants?
Wow, that's a big question. You want them to come and beat me up, eh? That's fine. There are different kinds of the GMOs. Some of them are actually called coded seeds. In America, most of them use the coded seeds, and some of them use the GMOs. So, there's a reason why. With the GMOs, if you plant them, it's almost impossible to plant the seeds again. You have to go back to the supplier of the seeds to get new seeds to plant again. Yes, they will give you higher yields. Yes, they will give you, more profits. But in the end, let's say something happens and then the seed bank is collapsed. That means you cannot get access to seeds again. So that is a disadvantage of the GMOs. But some of the new ones coming out, which are like the coded seeds, are a bit different. They are not organic, but at the same time, they are not like GMO. They're like in the middle. So those ones are also good, give you better yields, but they are developed to be able to withstand against pests and some diseases. So that, because sometimes when you go organic, it can actually be affecting your yields because the pest can attack them and then it destroys all your yields. So sometimes it's also good to go for some of these coded seeds to help the farmers be able to get some more yields, whilst on the back end, we develop more eco-friendly seeds that can be able to help us in various ways, one of them being health-wise, so that it doesn't affect our health in the future. So that is my answer to that question. So we just got to be careful. But GMOs in general, some of them have an advantage, but they also have a slight disadvantage, which could be bad for us as a whole.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, welcome.
Okay, is that everybody's question answered? It looks like it's. Sam, thank you so much for this
welcome.
Amazing job. I think we have to follow it up because there seems to be a lot of other directions that we could take this business talk. I mean, you've talked about an ecosystem that's probably we should build around the agro business, because it's not just the financing side, the management side, the planning, the tooling, equipment,
logistics,
logistics, education, next level, like Norris talked about. So it looks like there is a huge opportunity here for us to build around this to help develop the country, and I think it's something that we should take further in building this. Can you also give us some details about your book, so that where can people get it and that kind of stuff, so people know about it?
Yeah, so the book is still online on Amazon. At the same time, it's also available on www.moreprofitablethangold.com. On the last slide, it shows you the website. You go there, you can buy from Haptel or buy from Booknook, and they will deliver to your house anywhere you are all over the world. Haptel will only deliver in Accra, but they deliver in Accra in an hour. So you get it the same, within an hour, so they say. So they are very fast with it. So we are available for consultations. You can talk to us and we'll try and help you as much as possible with your farm. There is no fee with our consultations. We are all trying to help build Ghana. So any help you need from me, you can always reach out to me. You have my numbers, WhatsApp. I'm always available. We are there to help. Ghana must move forward, and we're going to do it together. We cannot continue blaming politicians. We got to play our role too. We got to play our role and get it right.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the streaming now. Thank you.